The old concept of coagulation cascade has evolved to a newer cell-based model. It reflects the interrelated role thrombin plays in both coagulation and platelet activation. In the setting of cardiovascular disease, the first phase of coagulation, initiation, is triggered by the spontaneous or mechanical disruption of atherosclerotic plaque. A tear in the vessel wall exposes tissue factor, which leads to the production of minute amounts of thrombin. Platelets also respond by adhering at the injury site. During the second phase, amplification, this initial thrombin activates and recruits more platelets and coagulation factors, setting the stage for large-scale thrombin production. In the final phase, propagation, massive thrombin production occurs on the surface of activated platelets. More thrombin converts fibrinogen to fibrin, leading to a clot formation. Thrombin bound to fibrin remains active. Thus, the clot becomes a reservoir of active thrombin that continues to activate platelets and promote its own generation. The burst of thrombin further fuels thrombosis by activating cells and proteins involved with inflammatory and thrombotic responses. Thrombin, the most potent physiological activator of platelets, also activates leukocytes and endothelial cells. The formation of platelet-leukocyte aggregates occurs as part of the inflammatory process and can embolize along with platelet aggregates from the thrombus plaque and occlude the microvasculature downstream. Therefore, optimal anticoagulation during PCI requires highly effective inhibition of thrombin and its effects on platelets. Heparin and low molecular weight heparin are a mixture of molecules of different sizes and anticoagulant activities derived from pigs or cows. As indirect thrombin inhibitors, they require the cofactor antithrombin, which can be depleted in thrombotic conditions. In addition, only 1/3 of heparin molecules have the pentasaccharide sequence required to bind to antithrombin. Due to shorter chain lengths, the majority of low molecular weight heparin molecules are inactive against thrombin. The heparin-antithrombin complex is ineffective against clot-bound thrombin. This reservoir of active thrombin continues to activate platelets and trigger further clotting. The availability of heparin is reduced because it binds to various proteins and cells, including platelets, and these heparin-binding proteins are elevated in acute coronary syndromes, or ACS. Heparin is also neutralized by platelet factor 4, or PF4, which is present in high concentrations near sites of vascular injury. This allows thrombin to continue activating platelets in the vicinity of the clot. Antibodies to the PF4 heparin complex activate platelets, causing thrombocytopenia, as well as heparin-induced thrombocytopenia thrombosis syndrome, or HITS. Heparin's incomplete thrombin inhibition allows more thrombin to be produced, and more thrombin means more activated platelets. Thus, thrombin-mediated platelet activation and other thrombin effects fuel thrombosis and inflammation. Heparin also has the paradoxical effect of making platelets more reactive to activation by other agonists. Given the various ways heparin increases platelet activation, its use may actually increase the need for antiplatelet agents. While GP2B3A antagonists attenuate platelet aggregation, they do not block other negative effects of platelet activation. Heparin's effects on platelets and its reappearance as it dissociates from cells and proteins may explain the prolonged bleeding risk following discontinuation of heparin infusion when a return to normal hemostasis is essential. In summary, heparin has limitations that pose unnecessary risks in ACS, a disease state characterized by heightened platelet reactivity, pre-existing thrombus, and inflammation. Unlike heparin, Angiomax is a unique molecule designed to target thrombin and only thrombin. The direct inhibition of thrombin by Angiomax provides several key advantages over heparin. Angiomax does not require a cofactor. Angiomax specifically inhibits thrombin by direct and bivalent binding to thrombin. Therefore, Angiomax provides rapid, effective thrombin inhibition to prevent thrombosis and platelet effects. Angiomax is able to inhibit both free and clot-bound thrombin. Unlike heparin, Angiomax inhibits thrombin where it's needed most, the site of massive thrombin production. In fact, the binding of Angiomax displaces thrombin from fibrin. Angiomax is a synthetic 20 amino acid peptide that binds with a high affinity to only thrombin, not to other plasma proteins. Therefore, Angiomax is not neutralized by plasma proteins or substances released from activated platelets near the injury. Because Angiomax does not bind to PF4, there is no risk of hits or other thrombotic events associated with PF4 heparin antibodies. Due to its direct and specific inhibition of thrombin, Angiomax prevents thrombin-mediated platelet activation. This provides an important advantage for preventing thrombosis and inflammation. Unlike heparin, Angiomax does not contribute to platelet activation. Angiomax is cleaved by thrombin, allowing thrombin to become active again. This allows the hemostatic activity of thrombin to quickly recover upon discontinuation of the Angiomax infusion. The natural reversibility and the short 25-minute half-life of Angiomax helps explain the significantly lower bleeding rates seen in clinical trials. To summarize, thrombin-specific anticoagulation effectively inhibits both thrombin and thrombin-mediated platelet activation. Angiomax with provisional GPI is indicated for patients undergoing PCI.